Hello, welcome to this Ned Davis Research Podcast, where we will help you see the signals. My name is Brian Sanborn, NDR's Global Head of Investment Solutions. In this episode, we will be speaking with NDR's Chief Economist, Alejandra Grindal, about the path of the global economy. Alejandra, what did the reported economic data show prior to the reciprocal tariff announcements?
Thanks, Brian. So the data was actually reasonably good. So, for example, global economic growth accelerated in March to its highest level this year. This is based on the composite Global Purchasing Managers Index reading. So this is just a good monthly proxy for global GDP. Within the US, the data, continue to be consistent with expanding economic activity in early 2025. So, for example, the Philly Fed state coincident indexes, which are monthly gauges of economic activity by state, it increased in 38 states in February. The job market was also strong. So non-farm payrolls, for example, rose by 228,000 in March. This was actually above the consensus. And retail sales increased 1.4% in March, which was the most since January 2023. Now, although this data included rising policy uncertainty and some US tariff announcements, it did come before the large and sweeping tariffs announced by President Trump on April 2nd.
Given that soft economic data, such as surveys, respond quicker than hard economic data, what are the soft data telling us?
Yeah, so that's kind of a different story. So even before the April 2nd tariff announcement, the soft economic data was already pointing to slower growth ahead. And what's interesting is it was sort of being felt across the board among different types of consumers and businesses. So just for example, the NFIB Small Business Optimism Index fell in March. It was the third decline in the row and the largest drop since June of 2022. So pretty much reversing most of that post-election bump in optimism. The Reuters University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index, this preliminary survey for April fell for a fourth straight month, essentially took the index to its lowest level since June 2022. Which was a record low. And to put this into another perspective, by this measure, consumer sentiment is now worse than during the COVID shutdown and the global financial crisis.
How was inflation before the reciprocal tariff announcements, and how could tariffs impact them?
So sometimes it's hard to get a pure read on month-to-month data, but in March, for example, we had a pretty good reading. We actually saw our first decline in CPI in 9 months. The most favorable development came from services, ex-energy, and rents. This is what the Fed often calls the super core, and it fell on a year-to-year basis to its lowest level in 4 years and near where it was just before the pandemic. So that's a pretty good sign. The problem is the unfolding trade war is a substantial upward risk to inflation, stemming from goods prices. Reciprocal tariffs for now are on hold, but they're not, tariffs in general aren't gone. Many remain in place in April. So this includes a 10% baseline rate on all US imports, over 100% on China, 25% on auto, steel, and aluminum, and additional tariffs on non-USMCA compliant imports from Canada and Mexico. The tariffs could drive up both consumer and producer goods prices. And then we also could see higher services inflation stemming from immigration policies, which could reduce the US labor force in some, very specific sectors such as construction and agriculture.
And how do you expect the trajectory of the economy to change if the reciprocal tariffs go into effect?
Sure, it's a great question. So if fully implemented, the tariffs will likely have extremely damaging effects on the global economy and a pretty high chance of putting it into recession. Just for sake of reference, according to the IMF, a 10% universal tariff coupled with retaliation abroad, very likely targeting the US's booming services sector, could reduce growth by 0.5 percentage point. So that early April announcement puts the tariff at least double that. So that could double the damage, if not more so. The global economy's one saving grace is that it was actually in pretty good shape prior to that announcement. but a 1-point reduction would likely put real GDP growth below what's typically been a historical global recession threshold of 2.5%. Regarding inflation, a recent Fed study suggested that just the baseline tariff rate of 10% would reduce CPI inflation by 0.8 percentage points in the next, or would raise, not reduce CPI inflation by 0.8 percentage points in the next 12 months. So together with the supply shock from tariffs, which is an upside risk to inflation, a downside risk from growth, this puts the Federal Reserve in quite a bit of a bind when it comes to monetary policy.
Alejandra, thank you for your insights. NDR clients can read Alejandra's research notes in her Global Economic Focus publication. The indicators that Alejandra and the research team developed for our subscription service are also used in our model portfolios, which are available for direct delivery on TAMPs and through ETFs. For more information on NDR, we encourage you to visit ndr.com. Also, for those listening in audio-only mode, video versions, including charts of See the Signals, are available by going to info.ndr.com/ndr-signals. Thank you for joining us as we help you to see the signals. So long.